To by Irene Bowers, owner of the Swiss Experience of Cupertino, California, and author of the Aquarian Knits. I would like to take a minute to thank you for buying this video. This is the first of a series of videos to help you perfect your knitting on the world's finest knitting machine, the Passap. All of the techniques I'm going to show you can be done on both the new E6000 or the DM80. I will use the E6000 in an effort to show you how you can use this machine without having to use the electronics. The same techniques can be done on the DM80. First of all, I will show you how to correctly thread your machine. I will show you various methods of cast-ons and rib techniques, including one I learned while in England. I will show you various methods of increasing and decreasing, both on single bed and double bed. I will show you various ways of dividing for the net, including my own. I will then show you how to do a rib and pick up the stitches and cast off both together, thereby minimizing your handwork. I will show you how to correctly use the U70, the U80, or the U100, and then cast off with ease. Lastly, I will show you how to do a neckband, a rugby collar, and also a scalloped rugby collar. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me at my shop in Cupertino, California. The telephone number is area code 408-252-3465, or write me at the enclosed address. Your input will help us in the future filming of these videos. This video is copywritten, therefore it is unlawful to reproduce all or part of this video in any manner for any reason. Thank you and happy knitting.
Strands? One. This is one strand? Wow. It's like a cross between a dolman and one of those.
Right, it is a dolman too. I know it's got narrow there.
This is great. I like to wear these with slacks. Jeans. But then you won't have them to show for display.
First thing I'm going to show you is how to correctly thread your machine. Start out by putting your yarn on the floor, making sure that it is free of any obstacles such as wires or whatever you might have behind there. I usually thread my bodkin and pull it up through the slot on the triangular piece and bring it down through the tension, making sure that it pops and slips between the little pin between the tension disc. Remove your wire. You can hold it in front and pop it through. Drop your bodkin through this hole. And be sure that everything is carried behind. Pick up the appropriate eyelet and drop your bodkin right through. Catch it underneath and hang it on the clip. At this point, we can adjust our tension mask by putting this on, holding it to the right, and slipping it into place. Be sure that when you thread, your first eyelet, your first yarn is over here on the first eyelet, second is on the second eyelet, third is on the third eyelet, and the fourth one is in the fourth eyelet. They all have to be behind one another or you can get into some serious trouble. You know that the sweater got that brown from the first thing I'm going to show you is an automatic 4-row single bed cast on. We're going to use the DM80 because you can't do it without the electronics on the E6000. However, with the E6000 you have an advantage because everything's done automatically for you. First of all, we're going to put up every needle on the front bed. And we're going to put up a pusher for every needle in work position. We're going to put every other one up and every other one in rest position. Move your edge springs over a closed latch. We're going to use the black strippers, stitch size about 5.5, using Bramwell 4-ply. Going to set the lock on BX and left arrow key and also the right arrow key. That's all there is to it. We're going to knit 4 rows. The first row is going to knit every alternate needle where there's a pusher up. The second row is going to knit the opposite needles. The third row is going to knit the first set of needles again. And the fourth row is going to knit the second set. This completes your automatic cast-on. Set your NX lever to end. You can release both arrow keys, though it's not necessary, and go ahead and knit. We'll knit a few rows and then take it off and show you what we've done. We have a very small piece, and there you have an automatic cast-on. First thing I'm going to show you is a single bed cast-on. I'm going to put every alternate needle up on the front bed, beginning with an odd number on the left and ending with an even number on the right. I'm going to put my edge springs on over closed latches. My row counter is at 0. And my stitch size is going to be at 1. I'm going to use the black strippers and pick up my first feeding eyelet. I'm going to knit 1 row. Now I'm going to bring up the alternate needles, beginning with 1 to the left of the last needle I just had up. So this is going to give me an empty needle, and I'm going to move my edge spring over. Be sure that the latch is closed. Bring all those needles up to the other ones. Increase my stitch size to about 5.5. And this is using the Bramwell 4-ply yarn. So the yarn that you're using is going to make a difference. Make sure that your tension is about a hand spread. And also the tension here should be set about 3.5. With that, we're ready to knit. This completes the single bed cast on, and we're ready to knit. We'll knit about 20 rows and take it off and show you what we've done. And as you can see, we have a very sort of just a line across, or a string across. This is not a very stable cast on by itself. It's most often used in waste yarns, or when you're going to cover this up, because if you pull this, that breaks, you could lose your stitches. But it works very nice for waste yarns and things to get started with. The next one I'm going to show you is going to be a 1x1 tubular cast on. We're going to start on the left and put every alternate needle up. Put your edge springs on. Your racking handout is going to be up, and you're going to bring into working position every alternate needle on the back bed, keeping with your needle rule. The needle rule is the last needle on the right is on the back bed, the last needle on the left is on the front bed. Put your edge springs on, and again, make sure that your latches are closed. If your latches are left open, this could cause your needle to break, your latch to break, or even the tip of your edge spring to break. So this is very important. We're going to start out with stitch size 2 on both beds. Pick up some yarn and knit 1 row. Be sure that you clear all of your needle, but not too far past. If you go too far past the edge of your needles, you could throw up loops on the left side. We're now ready to increase our stitch size to about 3. And put the pattern selector on C and move the annex lever to X. Do the same thing to the back. So that is CX, CX in the instruction manuals. We're now ready to knit 2 rows. This makes a row on the back bed and then on the front bed. First the back bed and then on the front bed. Of tubular knitting, which is how we get the name tubular cast on. This stabilizes the bottom of your rib. Go back to NN and increase your stitch size to 3.5 on both beds. Knit 1 row. This completes your tubular cast on for 1-1 rib. We are now ready to knit the desired rows of ribbing or knitting for your ribbing. Usually we knit about 40 rows. We're going to knit a few rows and then come back.
Every needle up on the front bed and every needle up on the back bed. Again, keeping with your needle rule. Now on this one we have to be sure to put the racking handle down. Put your edge springs on, making sure all latches are closed. Pick up your yarn and your feeding eyelet and set your stitch size again to 2. Row counter at 0 and knit 1 row. I'm going to put the front bed on C and X and also the back bed on C and X. This is very much like our 1-1 rib except that we're using every needle. Set your stitch size again to 3 on both beds and knit 2 rows. Back to NN. Increase your stitch size to 3.5 on both beds and knit 1 row. This completes your tubular cast on with full needle rib. We are now ready to knit a few rows and then we'll take it off and show you what we've done. There you have a full needle rib in a tubular cast on. we use quite frequently when we begin. First of all, I'm going to rack one full turn to the left. We're using every needle on both beds, just as we did the one before. Only we're going to use our stitch size about 4 and knit 1 row. By the way, we're using our orange strippers. Rack one full turn to the right and knit 1 row. This completes our racking cast on for a full needle rib. Again, I'll knit a few rows and take it off and show you what we've done. Be sure to keep even and regular movements by passing the lock across. This rib has a little more flexibility. It actually stretches more than the tubular cast on, which is good for some things. However, for many other things it may have too much stretch, so I usually prefer my tubular cast on. This one works especially good too when you are just practicing. The next one I'm going to show you is a tutu cast on, or a tutu rib. Uses actually a tubular cast on and a racking combination. We're going to bring up every needle on the front bed and every needle on the back bed, again keeping with the needle rule. Then we're going to use the back side of, or the front side of the black pattern ruler, which is set up for 2 and 1. That means 2 needles out of work, 1 needle in work. So what we're going to do is bring down the first needle on the right side and every third needle thereafter. So that leaves 2 needles in work and 1 out of work. On the back bed, we're going to start with the third needle and put every third one down. Put your end springs on. And be sure that no needles are protruding the division of your knitting machine between the beds. At this point, we are going to rack one full turn to the left. Pick up our yarn. Our stitch size is going to be about a 2. Make sure that your tension is adjusted properly. And knit 1 row. This makes a rather odd-shaped design, which is 2 on the back, 2 on the front, in sort of a zigzag fashion. At this point, we're going to move our NX levers to C and X again, and increase our stitch size this time all the way up to 3.5. We are now ready to knit 2 rows. Back to end, and rack one full turn to the right. Knit 1 row. This completes our cast on for tutu rib. I'm going to knit about 40 rows and take it off and show you what we've done. Having knit 40 rows, take it off. This is one of my favorite ribs. It has a lot of stability. It stretches and then pops right back into shape. Once you use this, you really like it for a lot of the bottoms of sweaters and the cuffs because they hold their shape so nicely. The next rib I'm going to show you is a double bed 1x1 rib. This technique works especially nice for when you're using like dual spun yarn, which the yarn is too thin by itself to knit a 1-1 rib. So we use it double. First of all, I'm going to put up every alternate needle on the front bed. And I'm going to put up every needle on the back bed. Keeping with my needle roll. Now I'm going to bring out a pusher out of the blocking rail for every needle in work position on the back bed. Be sure that your blocking rail closes. Now I'm going to put every other one up, beginning with the one on the right being in the work position. We're going to put our edge springs on. We're going to bring our yarn into the jaws of the lock. And we're going to knit with stitch size 3.5 on both beds. Orange strippers. And our racking handout is down. I'm going to knit 1 row. This makes a very peculiar cast on. You actually have 2 needles up on the back, then moves to the 1 needle on the front, 2 in the back, 1 on the front, 2 in the back, 1 on the front, all the way across. Can you see that? We are now going to set the back lock on BX. The front lock is going to remain on N, and we are going to knit double the amount of rows that we usually knit. For instance, if we usually knit 40 rows, we're going to knit 80. And with this, we're ready to knit. We are going to end on the left. We are now going to set the locks to CX and CX and bring into work position all the needles on the front bed. Knit 2 rows and X levers back to N on both beds and knit 1 row. At this point, you can go into any deco pattern or Fair Isle pattern on the E6000, even 3 or 4 color. I knit a few rows and take it off so you can see this fantastic rib. And as you can see, we have a 1-1 rib gone immediately into our double bed knitting. We don't have any of the see-through holes that we normally get. And we actually have our rib knit in a tube. This is our cast on, right up here. This is where we started out and we hung it, and it knit all the way around and back up the front. The next one I'm going to show you is some simple increases. They are easier than the decreases, so we'll start out with that one. I have already done a single bed cast on. I'm using stitch size 6 1/4, using Bramwell 4-ply yarn and black strippers. I have knit about 10 or 12 rows. Now I'm just going to increase to the right My lock is on the right, so I'm going to bring up a needle on the right and move my edge spring over. Knit one row, bring another needle up on the left, since my lock is on the left, and knit one row. And repeat it on the right, knit a row, repeat it on the left. So I'm increasing on the side where the lock is. We'll do a few more. As I mentioned, increasing is very easy. And one more. I knit a few rows. Having knit a few rows, I'm going to show you how we full fashion increase. I'm going to remove the edge springs for a little bit. Now I'm going to use my triple decker tool and pick up 3 stitches. I'm going to move it out one, bring into work another needle to the left, and put all 3 stitches on. What I've done is I've left a hole, would be the 4th needle in. At this point, I'm going to pick up the purl edge of my 5th needle and put that over on the 4th needle, thereby creating a stitch. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the right. I'm going to pick up 3 needles, move them down, and move it over one. Bring in an empty needle into work position and release the stitches. Again, my 4th needle is now empty. If I pick up the purl loop, not the stitch itself, which is hanging on the needle, but the loop behind the needle, and move that over to fill up the hole. We'll knit a few rows and do it again. Okay. Do it again. Pick up 3 stitches, move it over one, and if you place them on the next 3. To pick up the purl loop, remember it's behind the needle, and move it over to fill up the space. I'm going to repeat this on the left and bring the camera in close so you can take a good look at what I'm doing. I'm going to pick up the 3 needles, move it over one, bring an empty needle into work position, and release those stitches, thereby leaving a hole. Pick up that purl loop and carry it over and release it. We'll knit a few rows. Now I'm going to show you how to do some multiple increasing on single bed knitting. First of all, our lock is on the right, so we need to start on the left. We are going to put the first needle into work position just past our previous knitting, and then every other needle past that. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, go ahead and knit one row. Now we're going to bring up the alternate needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This gives us an empty needle on the right, on the left. Put your edge spring on. At the same time, we need to bring some needles into work position on the right. Our lock is on the left, we're going to bring in every alternate needle on the right, beginning with the first one to the right of our knitting. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Knit one row. Again, bring into work position the extra 5 needles on the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This puts it into work position an empty needle on the right of our knitting. Put our 8th string over a closed latch and continue knitting. And here you see we have our single increasing, and our full fashion increasing, which you can see this increasing is actually done on the 3rd needle in, giving it a very nice edge. And then we have our multiple increases. Next I'm going to show you some single bid simple decreases. By using our orange tool with the eyelet end, we are just going to pick a stitch up on the outside edge, very carefully move it over one needle. Put the empty needle out of work. I'll do the same thing on the left side, and we'll come in and you can take a better look at this. We are going to move the edge needle up until the stitch falls behind the latch. Move it down, very carefully move it over, and release it on the 2nd needle in. Take the empty needle out of work. Knit 2 rows, and do the same thing on the right. Take the stitch up, or the needle head up, push it down, and it's tight. Very carefully move it over, and put the empty needle down. Do the same thing on the left. Pull the needle up until the stitch falls behind the latch. Push the needle straight down until the stitch falls off of the needle and onto the orange tool. Very carefully lift it over and release it on the next needle. Pull the needle down, take the empty needle out of work. Knit 2 rows. I'm going to do it one more time. Take the needle up, down, over, and take the empty needle out of work. Same thing on the left. Up, down, inside one. Take the empty needle out of work. Knit a few rows. I'm going to show you some full fashion decreasing. Again, using our triple decker tool, we are now going to move 3 needles up, 3 needles down, and over 1. Putting the stitches on the first 3 needles in, doubling up on the 3rd needle in, taking 1 empty needle out of work. I'll do the same thing on the left side, and we'll bring the camera in closer for you so you can see. We're going to pick up 3, push down 3, let all 3 stitches fall off of the needles onto the black tool. We're going to move it in 1, get in there. We have now doubled up on the 3rd stitch in. Can you see those 2 stitches? And put those needles down. Be sure that your empty needle is out of work position. Knit a few more rows and do it one more time. Take up 3 needles, let all 3 stitches fall behind the latches, move it over 1, and put that on the next 3 needles in. Move it up, down, over 1. Put the empty needle down and out of work. To do multiple decreases, we are going to do the same thing as we would for binding off on single bit. We're going to pull out some yarn. We're going to take our orange tool. We're going to lift one needle up, down, over, and pull this needle all the way out. Release your orange tool, wrap it twice, and pull the needle down. And you're going to take off as many stitches as you need, such as 5 or 10. Move that needle up, down, over, pulling the next needle all the way up. Release your tool, wrap it twice, once below the latch and once above the latch, and pull the needle down. Give it a little slack when you're ready to put the needle all the way through. This is very important. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, give it some slack as you're pulling the needle through. If you're holding onto this thread too hard, too tight, you won't be able to slide the needle through. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time. Pull up your yarn. Adjust it in the back if necessary. Knit 1 row. And do the same thing on the left side. Pull the needle up, straight down. Very carefully move it over. Bringing the second needle in all the way up. Release your orange tool. Wrap it twice, once below the latch and once above the latch. Pull the needle down, giving it some slack right there. Do the same thing, up, down, over, wrap it twice, pull it down. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down. This is one of those things that becomes easier with practice. Take my word for it. Okay, we've taken 5 off of each side. Adjust your tension and knit 1 round. Sometimes that edge stitch is a little hard to get off and you may have to pull down on the needle to make the knit off. We'll do it one more time. Pull it down with your finger. Up, down, over, wrap it, and pull it down. You usually get into a rhythm of saying up, down, over, wrap it, and pull it down. And if you can remember that, it makes your steps a little easier to follow. But be sure to put all those empty needles down. If you don't, they're going to knit, and then you're going to have some extra stitches. Pull the needle up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, pull it down with your finger. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down. Pull those empty needles down, tighten up your yarn. We'll knit a few rows. And I'll take it off and show you what we've done. As you can see, we've done some simple decreases right alongside of the edge. And then up here we have the full fashion decrease, which gives us a few stitches on the outside edge, making the decrease on the third needle in, which gives it a very nice look. And up at the top we have decreased 5 stitches, knit 1 row, decrease 5 on this side, knit a row back, decrease 5 here, knit a row back, 5 stitches over here, and then bound out the rest, which makes shaping the top of the cap of the sleeve very nicely. I have already cast on and knit a few rows of double bed knitting, that is, stitches on the front bed and the back bed, keeping with my needle rule. I'm using the orange strippers. My racking handle is down to do this. I'm using Bramwell Dual Spun yarn, or Dual Magic as it is now called, and stitch size approximately 3 3/4 on both beds. My levers are set to end. I'm going to show you how we do some increasing on double bed. I'm just going to put a needle up on the front bed, move my latch over, make sure my latch is closed. I'm sorry, that was edge spring. We're going to move the edge spring over, move a needle up, make sure the latch closes, and knit 1 row. Move the needle up, moving the edge spring over, and closing the latch all at the same time on both the front bed and the back bed. We're doing this on the same side where the lock is. We're going to knit 1 row, do the same thing on the right. Move the empty needle up, move your edge spring over, making sure that you close your latch. Move an empty needle up, move your edge spring over, and close your latch. Knit 1 row, empty needle up, edge spring over, and close your latch. Same thing on the back bed. Knit 1 row. I'll do it one more time. Move the needle up, edge spring over, and the latch is closed. Same thing on the back. Knit 1 row. Move the needle up, the edge spring over, and the closing the latch. Knit a few rows. We're going to show you now how to do multiple increases on double bed knitting. We do the multiple increases on the side opposite the side of the lock. So we're going to put in 5 needles on the left side of the lock and move the edge spring over to the outside needle. Likewise, we're going to bring up 5 empty needles on the back bed on the left side of the lock. And make sure your latch is closed and knit 1 row. Now, because the lock is on the left, we're going to bring into work position 5 needles on the front bed on the right side and move the latch over, the edge spring over, being sure that the latch is closed. Likewise on the back bed, we're going to put up 5 needles. Move the edge spring over, make sure the latch is closed, and knit 1 row. We can knit a few more rows, and I'll do it one more time. The lock is on the right, so in multiple increases, we're going to bring up 5 empty needles to the left side. Move your edge spring over, be sure that the latch is closed. Likewise, we're going to bring up 5 empty needles on the left side of the back bed. Keeping with your needle rule, this is very important. Make sure that your latch is closed and knit 1 row. Your lock is on the left. We'll bring into work position 5 needles on the right side. Move your edge spring over. Make sure your latch is closed. Bring up 5 needles on the back bed on the right side. Again, keeping with your needle rule and being sure that your latch is closed. Knit 1 row. You can knit a few more rows. The next one I'm going to show you is simple decreases on double bed knitting. I'm going to remove the edge springs for the time being. And we're going to use the eyelet end of your orange tool. We're going to move the first needle up, move it down until the stitch falls off of the needle onto the tool, and move it in 1 stitch. I'm going to do the same thing to the back bed this time. Move the needle up, down, very carefully move it over, and help it along. Make sure those needles are down, and make sure the empty needles are down. We can do the same thing on the left side. I usually like to do my decreases all at one time. So we're going to put that needle over, also on the back bed. Move the needle out, down, over. Be sure to put those empty needles down. I'm going to knit 2 rows and do it again. I sometimes like to pull down on it. It helps that latch to close as I'm pushing this down. Very carefully move it over. Do the same thing on the front bed. Up, down, over. Be sure to put the empty needles down, and sometimes you might want to just stretch your stitches out a little bit. I'm going to bring the camera in close now and show you what we do on the left side. So we're moving it up, down, over, and do the same thing on the back. Pull it out, push it back, over, and release it. Be sure to put those empty needles down. Knit a few rows. I'll do it one more time. Pull the needle out, down, over, and release it. Up, down, over, release it. Empty needles down, stretch those stitches out if necessary. Up, down, over. Same thing on the back. So actually you're making 4 decreases. 2 on the front bed, 2 on the back bed on each side. To show you how to do multiple decreases on double bed. This is going to take a little bit more work because first of all we need to transfer those stitches from the back bed to the front bed. In order to do this, we're going to use our double-eyed bodkin, and we're going to move that stitch up, push it down, teeter-totter over the front, and put it on the stitch on the needle on the front bed. We're going to do that for as many decreases as you want to take off. So if you want to take it off at 3, we need to transfer 3 stitches from the back bed, or 5, whatever the pattern is calling for. In this case, I'm going to take 5 off and move it to the front. There's 4 and 1 more. At this point, you can put those empty needles down in the back bed so you don't forget to do it. And then we're going to wrap off. And I usually like to wrap off the first one that has 2 on. And then move that one up, down, over. Wrapping the needle twice. Again, once below the latch and once above the latch, and pulling the needle down. It's very much like the single bid decrease, except that you have to transfer those stitches from the back bid to the front bid before you start. Again, pull the needle up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down with your finger. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, pull it down with your finger. We're going to do it once more to get it into the needle roll. That way we will have our last needle on the right is on the back bid, and we need to put down the extra needles on the empty needles on the front bid. We're going to knit one row and do the same thing on the left side. Bring the camera in close so that you can see it. We're going to transfer that stitch from the back bid to the front bid, let it teeter-totter over, and come out the other side. Up, down, over, release it on the front bid. Up, down, over, release on the front. There's 3, and this makes 4, and we'll do one more. Put your empty needles down on the back bid. Wrap that first needle and release it. Move it in. Wrap it twice, once below the latch and once above. Give it some slack here, remember to do that. And then move the needle up, down, over to the next one. Wrap it twice, pull it down. Believe me, it does get easier with practice. And we'll do it one more time. You want to try to stay in the needle rule at all times. Put that down, and we'll knit one more row. We'll do it one more time. Transfer those stitches from the back bid to the front bid. You may need to help it along with your finger. Sometimes it may be necessary to close that latch with your finger. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down. A couple more times. Up, down, over, wrap it, and pull it down. Be sure to put the empty needles down. Knit one row. Do the same thing on the left side. Put 5 down, and there's 3, 4, and one more. Put your empty needles on the back bid down. Wrap that first one twice. Pull it down. Pull the needle up, down, over. Wrap it twice. And pull it down with your finger. Do it a few more times. Once more. Be sure to put the empty needles down. You might need to tuck that down between the bids. Watch your tension. And we'll knit a few more rows. This is the sample that I have done up. And you can see the little loops on the right side and also on the left side. That's when we were doing our single increasing, where we do our increasing on the side where the lock is. Coming over here is our multiple increases, where we did those on the opposite side of the lock. Coming up here is our single decrease. You can see how gradually it comes in. Same thing on the right side. And then our multiple decrease. Since we have these stitches on the machine, I'm going to get ready for our transfer and cast off. We're going to knit one more row to the left. Using stitch size approximately 3.5 to 3 3/4 with Dual Magic by Bramwell, I'm going to increase my stitch size to 5 on both bids and knit one row. If I haven't already done so, I will remove my edge springs. I usually like to get all 4 of them to the outside edge if possible. We're going to rack counterclockwise to 9 o'clock. And racking counterclockwise is extremely important. And every machine is going to vary somewhat. The way that you can tell is to take your needles and move them up so that they are just passing one another. Move them back down. We are going to transfer the far right stitch, which holds the tension that's still into the machine, and transfer that stitch from the back bed to the front bed, just like we did when we were doing our multiple decreases. You can go ahead and leave that needle in work position because we're going to need it in just a few minutes. At this point, you can pick up your U100, U70, or U80. With the U80 or the U100, we need to make sure that the setting is set on 4. With the U70, you don't have to worry about settings because there are none. We're going to put the U100 on the bed, clamping it down. The black arrows should be facing you, with the white arrow going to the right. At this point, we're going to give it some pressure on top and transfer all the stitches from the back bed to the front bed. In order to release the U100, we do have to press on these clamps to take it off. Setting it on the floor beside you, just take a look and make sure that all of your stitches have transferred correctly. I have one that's split. You want to make sure that you get the entire stitch. At this point, we're going to rack clockwise from the 9 o'clock position to the 12 o'clock position and back down to 6 o'clock. Something I also learned from Jean Acree is to, at this point, bring up an extra needle on the back bed on the far left, taking it out of the needle rule and just adding an extra one. This makes it easier to transfer off, to crochet off. We're going to pull down on our knitting. I find this makes a much nicer edge. With the increased stitch size on both the front bed and the back bed, we can knit one row. Open up your bed with the lever underneath the right side of your knitting machine. At this point, I like to break my yarn and either wrap it around the annex lever or attach it over here according to your triangular piece. I'm going to hold these needles down with my left hand and push the stitches back as far as they go with the back side of my orange pattern ruler. I'm going to use my yellow latch tool, and I'm going to pick up the left side of the first loop. We're going to take that and put it into the second one. Drop only the first loop behind the latch of our yellow latch tool, and carry it up. Go into the second one, drop only the first stitch behind, and bring that one through. I'll try to do this very slowly so you can see what I'm doing. This does become easier with time. Drop the first one behind the latch, pick up the left side of the next stitch. First one behind the latch, pick up the left side of the next one, and just continue to carry it in. I'll do this across and then take it off the machine, and I'll show you how I take it off the machine with ease. Just bear with me for a minute and I'll take it across. As I said earlier, it does get easier with practice, but it's one of those things that you do need practice with. Once you get a rhythm, it becomes very easy. Pull the last one all the way through. At this point, I like to hold down my knitting with my left arm, helping the front of the bed up with my left arm, and closing it with my right. This allows the chain to fall behind my needles. And when the chain falls behind the needles, I can take it off without getting hung up in all the latches. I'm merely moving my needles up, pushing them down, and releasing them. Same thing on the back bed. Move my needles up, slide the tops of my needles down, and bringing them down. At this point, we can take a look at our cast-off edge. Just sort of pull it out a little bit, and you can see your chain. Okay, I have knit approximately 40 rows of knitting with 1/1 rib. My racking handle has been up, my orange strippers are in, my stitch size is approximately 3.5 using the Bramwell 4-ply yarn. I'm now ready to transfer from the back bed to the front bed and go into stockinette stitches. So first of all, I want to increase my stitch size to 5 on both beds and knit 1 row. I'm going to rack counterclockwise to 9 o'clock. And in this case, since my racking handle was up, all I'm moving it is 1/4 of a turn. I'm going to put my needles up on the front bed between, or the empty needles up to the ones that I've already been knitting. And if I do this in a sequence, hopefully I won't forget any of the steps. So then I'm going to transfer the last stitch on the right from the back bed to the next empty needle on the front bed. And that needle on the back bed either has to stay all the way down into non-work position or all the way up into work position. If it stays halfway in between, you're going to run into it with the U100 or the U70 or your U80, and you're going to come to a complete stop. Be sure to move your back bed edge springs out of the way. If, for instance, you're knitting on the entire bed, you will need to take your left edge spring and move it, your right edge spring and move it to the far left and out of the way. Otherwise, that will stop you from being able to transfer as many stitches as you would like to. Next, we're going to use the U100. Again, set on 4 with the black arrows facing you, the white arrow moving in the direction that you're transferring from. Give it some pressure on both sides and move it across. That completes a transfer in 1/1 rib. At this point, you need to put the empty needles down on the back bed. And you can change your orange strippers to the black strippers. Put them back in the tool caddy that has been so handy. These are made by Bob Pritchard of Albuquerque, New Mexico. At this point, we can increase our stitch size to whatever stitch size you're going to use on the stockinette knitting, between 6 and 6.5, using the Bramwell 4-ply yarn. At this point, you can continue knitting. The next thing I'm going to show you is dividing for the neck with VX settings, or LX with the electronic. So we're going to set the lock on LX. I have already cast on a 1/1 rib and knit about 50 rows of stockinette stitching. We're ready now to divide for the neck. I'm going to bring out of the blocking rail all of the pushers on the right side. So we need a pusher for every needle in work position on the right side only. On the DM80, you could take pushers out of the blocking rail and just put them in the rest position. But with the electronic, it's going to be necessary that you keep those pushers to the left of center in the blocking rail. At this point, I'm going to take down, say just 5. With the setting set on LX, we're using our box strippers because we're on single bed knitting. We're going to knit 2 rows. Take down 3 pushers and knit 2 rows. Take down 3 more pushers and knit 2 rows. Take down 3 more pushers, knit 2 rows. Be sure to put them all the way back into the blocking rail. Repeat it all the way across until we get down to about 10. It won't be necessary to take your lock all the way past the end of your knitting. Having leaving on about 10 stitches, at this point we're going to put the NX lever to N and very carefully knit 1 row. We can put these other pushers down because we're not going to use those anymore. Very carefully knit across. Make sure everything is knit off. Now we're going to bring the pushers on the left side of center out of the blocking rail. We'll take down 5 first. Move the NX lever back to L and X, or VX on the DM80, and knit 2 rows. I'm going to put down 3 pushers all the way back into the blocking rail and knit 2 more rows. 3 more pushers and knit 2 rows. 3 pushers again. Knit 2 rows. 3 more pushers. Knit 2 rows. 3 more. Knit 2 rows. Now we have the same amount of stitches that we left up on the right side. We'll go ahead and put these pushers back into the blocking rail. Put your NX lever back to N and knit 1 row all the way across. Because you've worked the right shoulder up and the left shoulder up, we want to knit this row very carefully. And again, make sure everything is knit off. At this point, we can wrap off all the way across. Wrap it and bring it down. Take the needle up, down, over, and wrap it and take it off. Just like we were decreasing on single bed knitting with multiple decreases. We'll do that all the way across. We're wrapping off this entire piece. This is how we also wrap off on single bed knitting. Exactly the same way we're doing. So whenever I say wrap off, this is what we do. We're going to take that needle up, put it down, bring it over to the one next to it, wrap it twice, and pull it through. We'll do it again. Up, down, over, wrap it twice, once below the latch, once above the latch, pull it down. We've done that all the way across. We have a few more to do. This sometimes takes a little longer, but in many cases it makes a very nice edge. It holds the shape very nicely. A few more. Last one sometimes sticks a little bit. We'll just break the yarn off and pull it straight down. Pull up your loop and take it straight through. There's no need to knot it again. It just creates an extra knot that you have to weave in, and sometimes extra bulk. When we open up our neckline, you can see that it's shaped. Not a very dramatic shape, but just enough to give it a nice neckline. And it leaves a little eyelet design right around the edge. Now I'm going to show you how to bind up the center stitches of your neckline and then put the left half on decker combs. First of all, we're going to bind up approximately 20 stitches in the center. This is going to vary depending on your pattern. We're going to take and put number 10 to the right of center on the needle to the left of it. So it'll be number 9 to the right of center. We're going to hold our yarn behind and wrap it twice. Once below the latch and once above it. Just so to hang on to that tail and pull it down. We're going to pick that needle up and move it over to the next one in and wrap that twice, just like we were casting off on single bed knitting with wrap. But we're going to take off only the center 20 stitches. And as I said, this is going to vary depending on your pattern. Your pattern may call for 14, 18, or even the full 20. And a few more to take off. And I'll do this kind of rapidly. Get that needle up, down, over, wrap it twice, and pull it down. Be sure that when you wrap it twice, you get once below the latch and once above the latch. If you get both of them below the latch, you'll slip right off and you'll have a drop stitch. It's one of those lessons that we learn the hard way. Okay, one more to do. No, actually one more. And just break off your yarn and tuck it down between the bits. Be sure to move your empty needles down. We now have 20 empty needles at the center, beginning at number 10 to the left to number 10 to the right. At this time, we're going to pick up a 40 count decker comb. And we're going to remove these stitches to the left. You have two 20s that come with your knitting machine and 40 are available from your dealer. This particular case, since I'm making a very small piece, the 40 stitches, I actually have 40 stitches on to the left of center, so all the stitches will be able to fit on these needles, or on this decker comb. First of all, you want to make sure that all of your latches are open. Take the guardrail off, put it in your lap, and then just pick up those stitches, or the needles, and then pull the decker comb up until all the stitches fall behind the latch. You might want to pull down underneath to help them off. Now this point is very crucial. You need to push down on your comb toward the back bed, as well as pushing it down toward the bottom of the front bed. It's rather difficult to explain, but you need to push down that way as well as this way. And then just lower the decker comb down, lowering all 40 needles until the stitches actually pop off of the needles and onto the decker rail. Then you can sort of roll it back, and all of those stitches are secured on the decker comb. At this point, put on the guardrail. That should fit rather snug. You don't want it to be loose, so you'll go to pick it up and everything will fall off of it. And very carefully drop it between the beds. You'll want to put down the needles on the left side, and we're ready to shape our net on the right side. We'll go ahead and knit 2 rows. And use our triple decker tool for full fashion decreasing, since it always looks so nice. We're going to pick up 3 stitches, or 3 needles, until the stitches fall behind the latches, pushing them straight down and over 2. We're taking 2 empty needles out of work position and doubling up on the second and the third needle in. Go ahead and release those stitches and knit 2 rows. We'll do it again. Pick up 3 needles until the stitches fall behind the latches, push it straight down and over 2. Taking 2 empty needles out of work and replacing them on the next 3 needles. You'll have double stitches on both the second and the third needle. We'll knit 2 rows. Now we're going to pick up the 3 again, move it straight down. This time we're only going to move it over 1, taking 1 empty needle out of work position and placing them on the next 3. Now we have 1 doubled up stitch, the third needle in. Press back down and knit 2 rows. We'll do that again. Pulling 3 needles up, pushing all 3 needles down, very carefully lifting it over, putting 1 empty needle down, and replacing them on the 3 next ones. We'll knit 4 rows this time. And do the same procedure. Move it up, down, over 1. And a stubborn latch. Okay. Knit 4 rows. And do it again. Do it one more time, up, down, over, and then we've now taken off 20 stitches, a total of 20 stitches to the right of center. We've got 30 left on there. We'll go ahead and knit, say, 10 rows. eventually go ahead and knit some more. At this point, I like to take up the stitches from the left side and put it on the bed before I cast the right side off. I find that if I cast this right side off and then try to put my stitches on, I get into trouble and lose my stitches off the decker comb. So if I put them up before I bind the right side off, I have better luck. We're going to very carefully lift the decker comb between the bits. When you go to reach for that, just try to reach for it and push it up with your left hand underneath the bed so you're not giving a lot of pressure on this decker rail that could come off. And at least set it right over the top of your bed, lining it up to where you were. You were starting at number 11 to the left and going to 50 in this particular case. Setting it there, making sure everything is adjusted properly. We'll go ahead and put those needles down. Try to move your stitches to the back of the decker rail and hang on to the comb itself as you release the blocking rail, or guard rail, I'm sorry. And then tilt it slightly. Be sure again that you have it up the right position. Leave your needles down as far as they will go and reach for your needles with the use of the decker comb. I find this is much easier than by moving your needles up to, like up here. After you have secured all of those teeth on the needles, just very carefully move the comb itself up. By the time you get the needles to the top of your bed, you can see that all of the needles are secured with a comb or a tooth from the comb. At this point, we can pull it up a little further and start slipping them on. If you pull down underneath, as well as tilting it, that will release all of the stitches, and then you can move them down again to the knit position, just like that. Now if you have more than 40 stitches wide that's left on the left side, you can use a 40 count as well as a 20, or 2 20s or 3 20s or whatever you have handy. At this point now we need to bind off the right shoulder. Since you're probably getting tired of watching me do this, we'll turn the video off for a while and come back on after I have this done. Okay, we're done with the right side. We're going to break the yarn and pull this right down. You maybe have to come underneath here and pull that loop through. Be sure to put all of your needles down on the right side. And move your row counter over. Pull your yarn down between the bits and make sure that it's secured. I like to hang on to it in my very first row. Sometimes, if you've ever had this happen, you'll never forget it. But if you let go of that, and the yarn just takes it right through and you drop all your stitches after all of your hard work. Okay, we're going to knit 2 rows. Using our triple decker tool, we're going to pick up 3 stitches, pull it straight down, and move it over 2. Taking 2 empty needles down and out of work. Knit 2 rows and do the same thing. Up, down, over 2, and pull it down. Pull 2 empty needles down. Knit 2 rows, and pull up 3 needles again. This time we're only going to move it over 1. Putting the 1 empty needle down. Knit 2 rows, do it again. This time we'll knit 4 rows. it again. Picking up 3, pushing 3 down, and moving 1 over. If you find it difficult to work on the side where the lock is, you could actually just knit an extra row over, or an extra row short, whichever you like, and actually decrease on the side opposite the lock. And for beginners, this is sometimes easier. I'll do it one more time. One row is not going to make a difference either way. You just make up for it by cutting a short one row from this side and wrapping the left side off. Wrap this off and come back and show you what we've done. Okay, after we have done that, we can break the yarn. I'm pulling it straight through. Take that loop and pull it right up. Release this tail. And you can see where we have bound out the center stitches, shaped our neckline, and you can put a rugby collar over it, or a neckband, or whatever you like. The next one I'm going to show you is my own shortened version of doing a neckband, the neckline and the band all in one piece. What I'm going to do is use a 40 count decker comb again, and we're going to take off the center 40 stitches this time, a full 40. So we're going to place the decker comb over the needles from 20 to the left of center to 20 to the right of center. Make sure they're all secured. Pull it up. You may need to pull down with your fabric underneath. Go up a little further, let them fall off of those latches. And again, holding it down and pushing it towards you very carefully. Release those stitches off of the needles, tilt your decker comb back, and secure it with the guardrail. Now very carefully, drop it between your bits. Be sure to put all your empty needles down and move your row counter, your trip cam, to the right. Now we're going to knit 2 rows. And very carefully go right over that decker comb, and your lock will fit in the space provided by the 40 needles out of work. Be sure that you don't take your lock too far past, or you will drop your stitches on the right half of the left shoulder. And get 1 row back. Again, we're going to use our triple decker tool, and we're going to shape the neckline, just like we did before. So we're going to pick up 3, push 3 down, carry it over 2, taking 2 empty needles out of work position. Knit 2 rows, and do the same thing. Moving it over 2, knit 2 rows. Now we're going to pick up 3 and move it over only 1, taking only 1 needle out of work position. Doubling up on the 3rd needle end. Get 2 rows, do the same thing. Take it over 1, get 2 rows, time we're going to knit 4 rows. Take it out, down, over 1. 4 rows. As you can see, every time we decrease, we have more room for our lock to slip in the middle. Now that we have come over here at 30 to 50, we'll go ahead and knit another 20 rows, or 10 rows, I'm sorry. And we will have to bind all of this off before we can proceed. So we have 20 needles to bind off. Be sure that you don't hold that too tight like I just did. That's what gives it difficulty going through. Wrap it twice and keep it loose. It takes some practice to get just the right tension. You have to keep it loose enough to slide through and tight enough so that it doesn't jump off the needle. And it does take some practice. You can use your finger to pull it down, or you can actually use the orange tool. Just about done. A few more. Okay, at this point we need to break our yarn and secure it in the clip again. Make sure that it's secured good and tight. You release this last stitch and pull it through. Be sure to put all those empty needles down. And at this point, you can move your row counter, your trip cam, over to the left. This time we're going to shape while the lock is on the left. So we're going to knit 3 rows. Holding the tail of your yarn so it doesn't slip through. We're going to take up 3, move it over 2, doubling up on the 2 and taking 2 out of work. Knit 2 rows and repeat the same procedure. Up, down, over 2. Taking 2 needles out of work. This time we're going to move 3 up, 3 down, and move it over 1. Taking 1 needle out of work. 3 needles up, down, over 1, take 1 empty needle down. Do it one more time. Be sure that that latch is open. This time we're going to knit forward. Reduce 1. To knit the other 10 rows. Actually, we'll stop at 9 because remember we put an additional one going over to the left side. At this point, we need to bind off the left shoulder. And likewise, before I do that, I like to bring up my stitches on the decker comb. So what I'm going to do is raise my decker comb between the beds very carefully. Make sure there's no yarn on the one. And sort of push it up. If your teeth are coming face up, don't grab just the rail. You could pull the rail right off and release all your stitches. Try to grab a hold of the teeth. Very carefully lay it across the bed. We're going to put it now at number 20 to the left, again to number 20 on the right. You can just leave it there while we bind off the stitches on the left side. I'll do this quite rapidly so that it doesn't take too much of your time. Actually, you could put the stitches back on the bed, on your needles, before you do this, or you could do this first, and then put the needles back on. There's really no right and wrong method. You can do whatever is comfortable for you. You can also secure it from the peg over here. Makes it a lot easier than the tension pulling it through, because now I'm trying to hurry too much. That's what happens if you get it too loose. It jumps right off the needle. I usually like to hang a few heel grips on there too. That holds that down. But then again, if you drop the stitch while you're doing it, the heel grip also helps to pull it down. Okay, we'll break our yarn, pull this side down, catch that loop, and just pull it through. We'll go ahead and secure our yarn so we don't forget. Drop it between the beds, secure it in the clip, and pull your yarn up, all your loose yarn. Make sure your tension is adjusted properly. Should always be a hand spread. I have a large hand, so you have to take that into consideration. Okay, we're now ready to put these stitches back on the bed. We're going to very carefully remove that guardrail, keeping our needles down here. Tilt it until we can secure all of those needles and make sure all of your latches are closed. It's always got to be at least one stubborn one. Then begin pulling them up. By the time you get them up there, you should know whether they're all secured or not. Pull down on your knit fabric underneath while tipping it forward. Just like that. And lower your needles. Replace the rail immediately so you don't lose it or bend it. At this point, we'll open the bed and pull up some of the knitting on the side. As you can see, this is where we divided for the neck, and this is the shaping that we've done on the left side, as well as the shaping on the right. You can secure it with your edge spring to just sit there. And we're going to begin picking up stitches all alongside of this edge. So we're going to go into a hoe stitch. Remember, a stitch consists of 2 strands of yarn, basically. It goes up and around. So we're going to put the hoe stitch right on the needle to the left of the stitches that we had in hold and center. Just pick those up right along the edge. You don't want to pull this too tight. yet you want it enough stitches in there so you don't have any holes. The full fashion decreasing makes a very nice edge for which to pick these up. You could do some simple decreases, but that would give you a little bit of a knot to pick up on, and this makes a very nice smooth edge. I'm going to do that all the way along. Remember, you don't want to pull it too tight. Just about done. And then one more right on the edge. Now what I've done is I have picked up from number 21 to the left of center to number 40 on the left of center. So then I want to pick up number 40 to the right and just move that up somewhat as a marker. This is where I'm going to begin my decreasing or picking up my stitches along this edge now. So I make sure that I have the same amount of stitches on both sides. So I'm going to pick up that very edge stitch and put it on number 40. Then I'm going to move from the right to the left and pick up stitches all alongside of that edge. You want just the very first stitch. Can you see what I'm picking up? A few more to do. One more. Next we're going to close our bed and knit one row. Just take it kind of easy. You don't want to run into anything here by having your needles picking up too far or whatever. Just take it easy. It might be a little tight. Make sure everything knits off. At this point, we need to pick up our double-eyed bodkin and take the first needle to the right and transfer it to the back bed. We are then going to transfer every other stitch to the back bed. Just take that needle up, down, teeter-totter to the back this time, and pick up that stitch, or that needle, I'm sorry. Pick that needle up, down, teeter-totter to the back, pick up the needle on the back bed. Just like I do with my Decker combs, I reach for my needles. That way I know that they are secured by the time that I release them all the way to the back. And if I also push the front bed needle down as I go, I won't forget to put those needles out of work. Almost done. That's the wrong one. This way we're set up with our needle rule. Make sure that you don't have any poking through the center of your bed. At this point you need to make sure that all the empty needles on the front bed are out of work. And then double check your back bed to make sure you don't have any surprises back there. Now we're going to change from our black strippers to our orange strippers. Again, this tool caddy comes in really handy. Okay, we're going to reduce our stitch size to approximately 4. That is going to depend on the yarn that you're using. I'm using the Bramwell 4-ply, and I do want my neck edge a little bit looser than I would on the bottom edge, or the bottom rib. Okay, we're going to knit approximately 30 rows. Having knit the 30 rows, we're stopping at the left. If you want a mock turtleneck, you could knit approximately 60 to 80 rows and turn it back. You want double the amount of rows that you want. For instance, I'm just showing you a rib neck, a crew neck, and I knit 30 rows, I'm going to have about 15 because we're going to fold this back. So if you want a mock turtleneck, you're going to do about 60 to 80 rows. And if you want a cowl neck, you could actually set it on EX and EX on the back bed and knit approximately 80 to 100 rows. So the variance is yours. At this time, I'm going to show you how to transfer and cast off in 1/1 rib as we complete our neckline. We're going to increase our stitch size to 5 on both beds and knit 1 row. Rack counterclockwise to 9 o'clock. We are going to bring all the empty needles into work position on the front bed. And transfer the far right stitch manually with your bodkin. Remember, this is the one that has the tension on. It needs to transfer with the bodkin manually because it doesn't always transfer by hand or with the U100. Be sure to leave that needle either down, all the way down, or all the way in work position. If you leave it halfway in between, you're going to run into it with your U70 or your U100. And with the U100, you could break this plastic piece off of your lock. We're going to set it on the bed. Set it for, I'm sorry, I forgot to show you. We have it set at 4. We're going to set it on the bed, again with the black arrow facing us, the white arrow going in the direction that we're moving the lock. Give it a little bit of pressure, and knit across. Remove the lock, rack clockwise back to 6 o'clock, all the way down, and now we're going to bring up every needle on the back bed. Keeping with the needle rule, plus 1 extra needle to the left. At this point too, we're going to pull down with our knitting as we take the lock across with the increased stitch size on both the front bed and the back bed, and knit 1 row. You might pull a little hard, that's okay. We're going to open up our bed. I usually like to break my yarn off at this point. Either wrap it around the NX lever or up here. We're going to push those stitches back as far as they will go with the back side of our orange pattern ruler and crochet off. Using the yellow latch tool. I'm going to pick up the left side of the first loop, take it into the second loop, drop the first one behind the latch, and carry the second one through the first. Just take it carefully across the bed. I'm sort of guiding my needles with my left hand, but I'm not forcing them down. When I first started, I used to do that, and I about busted my little finger, and then realized I was fighting myself. I was pulling the needles down with my left hand while trying to pull them up with the right, and it doesn't work. So I'm just sort of guiding it. You will get a rhythm up, but it does get easier with time. However, some people don't believe me. Okay, we're just about done. Notice too that I hang on to it pretty low, not up here. You have more leverage if you hang on to it toward the middle to the bottom. Okay, we're just about done. We've got one more and we'll pull that one straight through. At this point I want to pull down on my knit fabric as I help the bed up with my left arm and close the bed with my right. Again, this puts the chain behind my needles so that I can pull all the needles up, pull them down, and off. And there you have the body of a sweater with a neckband already done. You take this piece and weave it to the back. I usually use a crochet hook so I don't get hung up in the latch. And then you can tack this down in the back. And you have a little ridge along the inside, and you can tack that right along there. And you have a very nicely finished crew neck, mock turtleneck, or even a cowl. This is also explained in the book, The Aquarian Knits. But there you have it. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to do a rib and then pick up your stitches on your other piece and then cast off the two stitches together. First of all, I've knit my rib. I've knit 39 rows, stopping on the left. I'm going to increase my stitch size to 5 on both beds. Knit 1 row, remove my edge springs, rack counterclockwise to 9 o'clock. And that may vary between 8:30 and 9 to 10 o'clock depending on your machine. I'm going to put every needle up on the front bed, and I'm going to transfer the far right stitch manually with my bodkin from the back bed to the next empty needle on the front bed. Make sure I put that needle all the way down. I'm going to use the U100, set at 4. I'm going to place it on the bed, again with the black arrows facing me, the white arrow going in the direction toward my locks. I'm going to give a little bit of pressure and transfer. At this point, I'm going to put all my needles down on the back bed and open my bed. Assuming this is the sample that I'm going to pick up the stitches on, I'm going to lift it between the beds, help it up with the pick end of my orange tool. I'm going to put the very first stitch on the needle, right on the machine with the stitches. I'm going to move right along the edge and pick up stitches all along the edge. Pick up a few on the right, and then pick up a few more on the left. We're merely picking up some right along the edge and putting it on the needles along with the rib stitches that we've just done and transferred from the back bed to the front bed. I'm using two different colors so you can see what we're doing. With your knitting, you'll probably have all one color, though not necessarily. This is very nice when you're knitting sideways and you need to put the rib on. This way we can minimize our hand work. You want to pull that so that it looks nice, but you don't want to pull it too tight. And you don't want to get too deep either. If you get too deep, it's going to make the next row very difficult. So we're just picking up the very edge stitch. Almost done. You need to have something on every needle on the machine, otherwise you'll have a drop stitch. Okay, push those down as far as they will go and close your bed. At this point you need to change your orange stickers to the black ones. Increase your stitch size about to 6. There again, it depends on the thickness of your yarn. We're going to knit 2 rows. First row is going to be a little bit tight, but not much. And then make sure that everything is knit off properly and come back. At this point, we need to wrap off. So I'm going to pick that stitch up, take it down, move it over, wrap it twice, and pull the needle down. Up, down, over, wrap, and pull it down. We're going to do this all the way across, and then we'll take it off and show you what we've done. Another thing that you can use this for is for your sleeves. Your sleeve band. You can use this technique for the bottoms of your sweaters or for sleeve bands on sleeveless shells, or for the cuffs, the rib bands on your sleeves right here. After the last one is done, you just pull it through and bring up your loop. Again, I've used 2 colors so you can see what we've done. This is our fabric. That's your rib. The back side gives a very nice professional look. This also causes blousing on a sweater very nicely. Causes it to lay very nicely. The next one I'm going to show you is a crew neckband that I really enjoy. I'm going to bring up 30 needles on the front bed. This is just a sample piece, so for your neckband you may bring up 50, 55, 60 to 75, depending on how long you want it. We're going to bring up the same amount of needles on the back bed, keeping with the needle rule. Put our edge springs on, front and back. Be sure that your latch is closed. We're going to start out with orange strippers. row counter is at 0. We're going to start out at stitch size 2 on both bits. And knit 1 row. Move the levers to CX and CX on the back bit. Increase your stitch size to 3.5. Again, this is going to vary depending on the yarn you're using. I'm using Bramwell 4-ply, so I went from 2 to 3.5. At this point, you're ready to knit 2 rows. And end. Increase your stitch size to 4 on both bits. And knit 1 row. Now we're going to knit on just the front bit. So we're going to put the back bit on G and X. We're going to increase our stitch size to 6 on both bits. I like to increase my stitch size on both bits so I don't forget when I go back onto the back bit. Right now, however, the back bit is set to GX and I won't be using it. So I'm just getting ready for the next step. At this point, I'm going to knit only 1 row. Then I'm going to remove the orange strippers and replace them with the black ones. Now I'm going to knit another 10 rows. And the front bit on G and X. I'm going to use my yellow latch tool and I'm going to come between the bits and pull down this piece of yarn. This is very important. So we're going to pull this yarn down, break it off, and secure it to the clip. At this point, we're going to knit 12 rows on the other side. We're actually knitting on just the back bit. So what we've done is our 4 rows of cast on. We've knit 12 rows on the front bit and 12 rows on the back bit. I believe earlier I said I'm going to knit another 10 rows. That was another 11 rows. I'm sorry. Now I'm ready to go to my waste yarn. Pick up a waste yarn, and I'm going to go back to N on the front bit, GX on the back, and knit 12 rows. I'll put the front bit on GX and the back bit on N. At this point, I'm going to knit 12 rows. I will release my yarn, putting the locks on N and N. I'm just going to release my knitting from the machine. Make sure that your racking handle is down before you do this. Release your knitting and break your yarn off. At this point, we have a rib. This is the top of your neckband. It has a very nice fold edge. This blue is your waste yarn, and you need to take that immediately over to the iron and press the waste yarn. This makes your waste yarn and your neckband behave very nicely. The reason that I have you pull that yarn down is so that you don't have this. We can break this because it's our waste yarn. But if this is in your knitting, in the neckband piece, you don't have enough there to weave in. You will have to break it in order to get it over your neck, over the shape of your neck, your sweater. And that will lay on there, and you can backstitch that all in place very nicely. The next one we're going to do is the rugby collar. I'm going to put my needles up on both beds. In this case I'm going to use 50 and 50 for a small collar. So it's 50 to the left of center, 50 to the right of center. We're going to bring up the same needles on the back bed, keeping with the needle rule. Put your edge springs over the edge needle. Make sure your latch is closed. 50 at 50 makes a nice collar for approximately a small. 50 at 55 for a medium. 60 at 65 for 60 at 60 for a large. 65 at 65 for an extra large. Here we're using our orange strippers, and our racking handle is down. Our row counter is at 0, and our stitch size is going to start out at 2 on both beds. Knit one row, CX and CX. Increase our stitch size to 3 1/2, and knit 2 rows. Back to N and N. Increase our stitch size to 4, and knit 1 row. You can put a stripe in if you like. I'm changing color and knitting a couple rows. This one's a little bit tight. Okay, we're ready to knit to row count 59. Row count 59. Your lock is on the left. Increase your stitch size to 5 on both beds. And knit 1 row. You remove your edge springs and rack counterclockwise to 9 o'clock. We're going to transfer our last stitch on the far right manually with your bodkin to the needle on the right that already has a stitch on. Because we're using every needle on both beds, we're going to double up on our stitches. Again, we're going to use the U100, set at 4, setting it on the back on the bed, giving it some pressure, and move it along. Now we can just wrap these off or crochet off, whichever you prefer. We'll go ahead and crochet off. The wrap off makes a very nice edge too. However, it does have less stretch. You want to make sure that everything is secured. You may have a couple stubborn ones that the yarn splits. We're going to rack counterclockwise back to 6 o'clock. And put up all your needles on the back bed. They should be up, you just want to make sure that they're all there. And I like to put one more on the back bed to the far left. And then my stitches don't run together after my last row. Something I learned from Carl Peterson too is to remove the orange stripper at this point and insert one black stripper. Having done that, we'll knit 1 row across. I also like to pull down to make sure everything knits off. This row is going to be a little tight. Open up your bed and push all those stitches back as far as they will go. You want to make sure that you have 2 stitches on every needle. What I mean by that is actually 2 loops. at every one. See how there's two here? If you have only one, you have a drop stitch someplace. At this point you can break your yarn off and crochet off. Or latch hook off, whatever phrase you want to use. We're going to pick up the left side of the first loop, go into the second one, drop the first one behind the latch, and carry it through the first. I'm going to do that all the way across the bed. Since I've showed this to you before, we're going to move pretty fast and get these off for you. Just about done. This does get easier with practice. Pull off the last loop. Grab a hold of as much as you can and pull it down while you help the bed up with your left arm and close your bed. Again, that helps this chain to fall behind your needles. For instance, you can see where this chain is in the front of my needles. This is the area that might give me some trouble when I want to take them off. Moving all down. And that's the one that's flipped. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with slip stitches on the back bed. Release all those stitches. And now you can see we have a rugby collar. You just weave in your ends and attach it to anything. This time we're going to do a scalloped rugby collar. It's very much like the one we just did. However, this time it's going to have a little scalloped edge along the edge of the collar. We're going to start with 50 on the left to 49 on the right. We're going to bring up the same amount of needles on the back bed, keeping with the needle rule. Put our edge springs on. Make sure your latches are closed. And make sure none of the needles are past the center of your bed. We're going to use a rack and cast on with this, and we want to make sure that those needles are all nice and snug and they won't get caught up. Now we're going to take all of the pushers out of the blocking rail on the front bed. And this is true of the DM80 or the E6000. So we want a pusher in rest work position for every needle in work position. Now we're going to put every fourth one down. With the DM80, you can put the fourth pusher in rest position. But with the E6000, you need to put every fourth pusher all the way into the blocking rail. We're going to start out with 3 in rest work position and 1 in rest. And by having one number less than on the left side, we start out with 3 and end up with 3. That way our scallops will all be even. Our racking handout is down 6 o'clock. We're going to start out with contrast yarn. Stitch size about 4. Stitch size at 4 using the Bramwell 4-ply. If you're using the dual spun, you might want to go down to stitch size 3.5. At this point, we're going to set the front bed on K and X on the E6000 and AX on the DM80. The back bed is set to N, and we are going to rack one full turn to the left. So we're going to rack counterclockwise, one full turn to the left, and knit one row. We are now going to rack one full turn to the right and knit one row. We're going to change to our main color knitting and knit 4 more rows. This may be a little tight, but that's normal. At this point, we're going to move our NX lever back to N and knit to row count 59. We are now at row count 59. Our lock is on the left. If you want to do just the collar, at this point you can increase your stitch size on both beds, knit 1 row, transfer to the front, and crochet off or latch hook off. If you want to do the sandwich neckband, we're going to knit 1 more row. At this point, we're going to put our black strippers on and increase our stitch size to 5.5 on both beds. We are now going to set the back bed on G and X, the front bed on N, and knit 8 rows. Again, we're going to use our yellow latch tool and reach up between the beds and pull that yarn down. Pull it down and break it. Secure it to the clip. We're now going to put the front bed on GX and the back bed on N. Knit 8 rows. Now we're knitting the back bed. We can pick up our waste yarn and knit 8 more rows, or 10. Put the back bed on GX and knit the front bed at N for 10 rows. Release our yarn, put both beds on N in, make sure that your racking handle is down, and release your knitting from the machine. And there you have a scalloped edge along the collar with a sandwich band on. You would press your waste yarn, and put this over your neckline, stitch it in place. This makes a very nice collar. Hold it. Just weave your tails in.
This concludes our first video. We hope you have enjoyed it as much as we have enjoyed filming it. There are numerous other techniques I hope to share with you in future videos. For now, happy knitting, and we'll see you in the next video. This has been brought to you by the Swiss Experience of Cupertino, California, and filmed by Byron Height of San Jose, California.